what I'm talking about. My life is so freaking incredible. I know you guys are like, who is this guy up here? I don't know this guy. My name is Henry Montgomery, and I go by Poise. I'm an entertainer, and I'm also the boyfriend of Michelle Mangum. She's actually the technical lead at Pandora, so that's my girlfriend right there. And I actually happen to know the DJ Lucky from back in the day, so I asked him could I do a song that I actually completed, so he was nice enough to let me do it. So I hope you guys enjoy this. And I actually just finished this the other day, so thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me this space. Let's roll, brother. Hey, babe, you come up here. Come up here. Come up here. Long story short, you may ask yourself what type of person, a killer person. I wasn't a gang member. I graduated from high school. I didn't do drugs. I didn't rob people. I didn't steal, you know. I was basically a good kid. Just grew up in a violent neighborhood. Got jumped a lot of times by gangs. Grew up watching my mom being abused. Couldn't protect her. Had a lot of guilt. Last time I got robbed, and I've been hospitalized a few times. Got stabbed. You know, I mean, it's funny how I could just say this like it's nothing, but went through a lot of stuff basically. And one day I just made up my mind, and I actually remember the day that it happened. I got robbed. I had a friend who used to walk me home, like if I would stay late at his house, he would walk me to the bus stop. And this particular night, I was like, no, I'm cool. I said, I'll call you when I get home. So I get to the bus stop. I got robbed, got beat, ran back to his house. I told him what happened. So he was like, come on, let's go get the dudes. So we started going back towards where the dudes were. And I got like a half a block from it. I said, no, man, I'm cool. Let's just go this way. So we turned up. It's good stuff. When you get out, you want to stop the violence, but nobody ever shows up to the healing circle. And one day he kind of pissed me off because I told him over and over, I'm going to be there. You know, I'm the type of person, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I told him, I'm going to be there. And he was like, okay, well, we're going to see. And I don't come every time, you know, but I do show up and I do work in the community. And I've been blessed to give presentations at schools, and every day I try to give back. I know that I can never make up for what I did, but I'm doing the best that I can do, and I will dedicate the rest of my life to stopping this violence. And thank you for allowing me to speak, and thank you, Henderson. Yeah, and he ends it with the big one. It's over! Yes, it's two! I took him out! I took him out! I took him out! I'll be the 14-year-old. What's that show, How Smart is a 5th grader? No, Are You Smarter Than a 5th grader? Well, I'm better than a 14-year-old on the basketball court.
You're not better than Axel Lane, so join the two Boston Family Service Agency, who we work side by side. We have been working since
That's my friend, Maddie Scott, Black Panther activist. Her son was murdered by gun violence.
I lost my other son, Robert, to violence. He lost his life because he would help some guy fight, and he didn't even know the guy. So the guy seen my son a month later and shot him at a bus stop, and shot him in the back and killed my son. But I got justice for him because he's in jail doing 85 years. All right. So I got justice for both of my sons.
All right.
All right. And God bless all of y'all in here, everybody, okay? I don't know y'all, but y'all feel my pain. But I love all y'all anyway, especially Ms. Scott for bringing me here.
Yeah.
And like she was saying, I lost contact with Ms. Scott years after my first son was murdered. So, but I'm back with her now. So, God bless all y'all.
My kid's father was murdered. He was chased down this very street in 2007, September 2nd. They called us killers. They went to jail, but they got off. They got out. They roaming the streets now. right now today.
Actually how I felt, because basically my family like abandoned me, and I did 24 years straight. So I literally felt like the coffin was myself. And so for me to be able to express that and to get that out, 'cause I'm still dealing with issues with my family. That's one of the reasons why I moved to the Bay. I'm from Los Angeles, and I'm like, I'm cool on y'all. And I came up here and met people who I consider my family, like people that's right here on the stage. So that's a real personal. It's healing, and yet it's giving you a side for those who may have something incarcerated. It's giving you something, because they'll never tell you how they're really feeling on the inside, and especially as men, you know, with the male role belief system, they can't tell you that I'm afraid or I'm scared or I'm.
Bring crime victims and perpetrators together.
When the Healing Circle first came inside, we were afraid of them, you know, because we thought that they were coming in to judge us and to bash us, you know.
Former inmate Henry Montgomery was serving time at San Quentin for a murder he committed as a teenager. He came face to face with Bay Area mothers whose sons were also murdered.
My first time going into San Quentin, I was really scared, shivering.
Within the next 6 months, it went from adversarial to we're family.
I really got a lot of insight on what I had done and the pain that I had caused.
Henry was released from San Quentin several months ago and continues to come to the Healing Circle meetings.
It really impacts us because then we know that we're changing people for the good.
We were once victims, but now we're survivors.
My heart is filled with so much love, and I need someone I can call my own to fall in love. That's what everyone's dreaming of. I want this feeling all too strong. Life is too short.
What is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about Michael D?
Joy. Joy, because Michael lives out loud.
What was your first impression?
A man with a loud mouth. Happy. My dad is a very, very happy person. He is very positive. He sees the positive in everything.
He is unapologetic in pursuing his joy and offering it to others.
Just being out with Michael, walking through a mall or any place where there are other people, it's nice shirt, my brother. Love that shirt. That's a great thing. Girl, you working that hat. He gives something to every person that he can. And wonderful experiences come out of it.
Pick a card.
Okay.
Oh, he hands out these cards. He's got these little cards that you pop it open and inside is some phenomenal saying or quote.
Stretch out your hand and take the world's wide gift of joy and beauty.
That's so sweet.
What's your say?
And it can change a person's day. I've seen it happen. And they go, oh my God, this is what I needed.
Oh, you don't forget him if you've ever met him.
His gift to me has always been his ability to weather the storms no matter where they are and smile through them. I don't think I've ever been able to be sad around Michael, ever.
Incredible.
The animated character.
Phenomenal.
Gregarious.
Funny.
Michael is a loving human being. That encapsulates it all.
In about 5th grade is when I decided that I wanted to be a physicist and go into space. Black kid on the west side of Chicago, all right? But my mom was, you go boy. My mother's name was Wilhelmina Blanche Alberta Breathwaite McCarty. Born in Barbados in 1908. She was just a joyful, always positive, loving, absolutely loving spirit. Reading was her education. I'm a readaholic because of my mom.
What do you think was the greatest challenge in her life?
Me? Remember now, she was in her 40s when she had me. She didn't know she was pregnant. She thought she had gas. She went to the doctor complaining about gas. He said, no. You got Michael. I had my oldest brother, Edward. He's 25 years older than me. And then Grover and Juanita, my brother who's 14 years older than me, and my sister who is 20 years older than me. So when I came along, both of my parents, they're what should have been the chill out part of life. And I come and mess it all up. My father's full name is Grover McCarty. He was from Shabuta, Mississippi, born in 1900. My father worked the graveyard shift, and then during the day, he did odd jobs. They sent me to Catholic school. I went to private schools. All right, I'm from the west side of Chicago, and it's funny because people say, oh, did you go to the... No. I went to St. Finbar, St. Ignatius, all right? And St. Ignatius, it costs more to go to St. Ignatius at the time than to go to Circle, University of Illinois in Chicago, all right? So my father worked. For 1st grade, went to St. Finbar.
And was the school integrated?
After 3rd, 4th grade, there weren't any whites in the classroom.
What were the teachers? Were they white or black?
No, they were all white. Yeah, it was, black teachers were a rare sight. St. Ignatius was 95% white. And that 5% was everybody else. And I was gonna be a physicist. I wanted to go to the University of Chicago, and that was the best shot, is to go from Ignatius. I remember, I think it was my sophomore year of high school. Me and a buddy were going to go to this party in the projects over on the south side. We walked in past these guys and turned where we thought the elevator was. It was a dead end, turned around. There's these guys. It was a gang. And they proceeded to beat the snot out of us for what seemed like forever. Now, the guys who were kicking my ass had kicked my ass out onto the street. And they were literally couldn't raise their legs anymore to stomp, and they couldn't bend to strike anymore. They were so tired. And most of them walked away, and this one guy grabs me by my collar, puts a gun to my head, and says something to the effect that, I'm gonna kill you, nigga, and pulls the trigger. And this girl, who to this day I consider an angel, grabs his hands just as he pulls the trigger. Don't do it, Johnny, you'll get in trouble. And he pistol whipped me and tells me to run. I can't stand up. So I crawled as fast as I could. So I crawled over to what was then South Park, now King Drive. And there's a cop stopped at a light. Now my friend is still in the building. I'm bleeding, I'm swelling. I stagger over to this cop's car, and I'm telling him what happened, and he looks at me and says, so what? And this was my reality check. Here's some reality for you. Because this ain't the way it's supposed to happen. This is not the way it would happen in Leave It to Beaver and Ozzie and Harriet and all that. Calling all cars, nah. I get into his car. I said, look, man, arrest me, take me to the police station or something. Pulls up. The police station was a few blocks away, drops me off and goes on about his business. So I'm thinking this is an aberration, right? So I go into the police station. I never even got a chance to say anything. Now I'm really swollen up, you know, blood dried, and I'm looking pitiful. And all the white cops just start laughing. They were only white cops. They just start cracking up. That's when I woke up, started really paying attention to what was going on, started reading. There was a black bookstore in the south side of Chicago. I lived in that bookstore. I was reading. Everything I could about Africa, liberation struggles, black inventors and scientists that I was finding. It was like finding a whole new world. When I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, which changed the course of my life, that's when I became an activist. That's when we started our black student organization. We started speaking out against things. Started looking around. St. Ignatius on Roosevelt and Blue Island was in the black community. There were hardly any black students there, and the school had no interaction with the community. So our little organization decided to submit a list of demands to the administration. And they promptly said, get your ass out here. And so we decided that we were going to stage a walkout. A bunch of us walked out, maybe 25, 30. My mother found out about it on the news. There was me on the news leading this walkout, my senior year, just a couple of months before graduation. I was going to be the first someone in my family to go to college. I was going to be a physicist. I was going to be in the space program. That was my dream. And St. Ignatius is a school where judges and politicians send their kids. I had scholarships to University of Illinois in Champaign and Notre Dame and other places. And I just walked away from all that to be a revolutionary. Next day, my father came home, did not kill me. We went to the school at the school's request, and my father was informed that I was expelled. Gary and I were expelled. And so my life as a full-time revolutionary began.
When did you first remember hearing about the Black Panther Party?
When they went to Sacramento, that really got attention. That was, whoa, brothers packing heat. Standing up and saying, enough of this. You all aren't going to protect us, fine. We'll protect ourselves, and we'll protect ourselves from you.
In America, black people were used, were brutalized. The police in our community occupy our area, our community, as a foreign troop occupies territory.
They were organized. They knew what they were doing. They did things with intent. I joined in November of '68. And so now I was a full-time member of the Black Panther Party on the education cadre. We taught the political education classes. If Fred was giving us a speech and they needed some information, that was our job. So the party became my life. The party was my life. One of the things that was a given, there's going to be attempts. Some of us will lose our lives. Some of us will lose our freedom by going to jail. Some of us will lose our freedom by being exiled from this country. Some of us will be bought off and turned into informers. It's given. It was a given that these were the options. I had weapons. I generally didn't carry them. When Reagan changed the law that allowed the Panthers to carry weapons, now, if it had been a white organization, the NRA would have been all over that. They didn't have nothing to say. They didn't have nothing to say. The first mission was to protect the black community in the Oakland area from police brutality.
When we first started, we had a police alert patrol. If we saw the police brutalize anyone, we put an end to this. Usually the police wouldn't brutalize anyone if we were on hand because we were armed.
Then that mission spread to other cities. And then there was this concept of education and revolution. And then came the concept of, well, what does the community need? Kids are going to school hungry. People don't have health care. People don't have food, don't have clothing. And so the party developed strategies to address these needs within the communities. Then there was the broad reach, Native American communities, white communities.
UEP Newton says every black man, every Mexican American, every Indian, and every white radical has got to get themselves armed so we can have the power in our hand.
We have things in common. We should work together. We should support each other. All right, these things happen.
What do you think would be the greatest misconceptions that maybe
Oh
white people
my
have about
God.
the Panthers?
The Black Panther Party is a black Ku Klux Klan. That's the most common misinformation, that the Black Panther Party was out to kill white people. Nothing could be farther from the truth. We did not accept the white man is the devil, kill whitey kind of mindset. That's number one. Within the black community, there were folks who didn't like the organization. But then there was the breakfast program. There were the free medical clinics.
The image of the Black Panther Party that I see today that's put out on media is not the image of the Black Panther Party I grew up around. What I remember, and I remember this clearly, was going and getting shoes. The Black Panthers had a pantry where you could go get shoes. I also remember the Panthers had a storefront where kids going to school could stop by and get breakfast. That was my introduction to the Panthers. Moms and dads feeding our youth, educating our youth, providing clothing for our youth. They weren't doing anything but exercising their rights as U.S. citizens. The Panther Party was probably one of the most basic, fundamental American institutions created.
Tell me about the time that he came to talk to your class.
Michael had just led a walkout. He comes in, he speaks to the class. He said some things that were powerful. He said, what is freedom? We said, that's simple. You got a problem with that? You know, technically, you know, freedom's doing whatever you want to do. You know, hello? And so he said, well, you know, he turned to us and he said, well, if freedom is doing whatever you want to do, walk out on the sidewalk and slap a cop and see how much freedom you have. And so we had to think about it. We didn't have a comeback. And he said, you are only as free as you are responsible. And I couldn't dispute it, so it stuck with me. He showed us that don't get caught into that conception that, you know, freedom is just free. And it has to be balanced out with responsibility.
I think a lot of people think that the Panthers' mission was just to fight. And it really, I mean, we do have to fight as a race in this country, but it was about far more than that. It was an uplifting movement. It was to get us from being at the bottom of the barrel. I think that was why they were so feared. They were working and reaching out to other people, other communities, other races, to try and combine, because if you can get everybody who's struggling, everybody who's marginalized together and fight the powerful who are smaller in percentage, then that's wonderful. And that's, I think, what scared the government about them.
The thing that J. Edgar Hoover said was the most dangerous thing we did was our service program, starting with the Breakfast for Children program.
That's what scared the government about the Panthers, is their abilities to try and bring other groups in and make that a united struggle.
Our issue was, if you're concerned and want to change the way this government is dealing with us, we're on the same side, regardless of what your race is, regardless of what your color is. That was dangerous.
I had to ask myself, what about this society made it necessary to have a Black Panther Party? What about the society set it up so it was necessary for these men, women, and children to conduct themselves in the way that they did?
We know we as an organization are going to be infiltrated by the government, by the FBI, by local police. Chicago had its Red Squad and what have you. But what we didn't know is the level and nature of the dirty tricks that were done. At every level, they were destroying and destroying. There were chapters of the Black Panther Party that were started by FBI informers and plants.
We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary.
Oh, Fred was a trip. Fred was dedication. Fred was commitment. Fred was, when he talked about loving the people and dying for the people, he meant it. He meant it. He did it. He was fun. He was our leader and one of us at the same time. All right. Remember, he was 21 years old, and there were people in the party way older than him, but he had that it. He had that. He had that. He had that. Oh, I mean, I consider it one of the great blessings in my life to have known him. Fred Hampton was assassinated December 4th, 1969, 4:30 a.m. is when the raid went down. A raid that was conducted by the Red Squad, I believe, of the Chicago Police Department under the direction of the FBI. I left that apartment at 2 a.m. Woke up from a dead sleep. Decided to go to, because I didn't live there, I was staying with my parents at the time. Got home on the bus, hardly laid down when the phone rang to inform me about the raid. They killed Fred with intent. Fred brought people together. There were such divergent personalities in the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. I mean, there were people who, on normal circumstances, couldn't be in the same room or maybe in the same city as each other, okay? But Fred made it work. Fred brought people together. Different races, the Young Patriots, working together. That's a dynamic that's not easy to replace. And that's why he was killed.
The authorities overreacted on so many levels. Whatever you felt about the Black Panther Party, you can't justify what the police departments did.
Ultimately, the survivors sued the police and the FBI for the murder of Fred, and they won the suit. Now, for a time, because of Fred being killed, we were all very, very focused. But that element was gone. And now these abrasive personalities were abrading, if that's a word. And so we decided to leave. A bunch of us did.